So when I'm done with my slides, there will be an opportunity to ask questions and go back and forth, because I want you to get the chance to experience that. If you do have questions throughout or you need more clarification, Jess is going to be watching the chat, so she can kind of stop me and we can pause and address any of those questions, but you will have an opportunity at the end as well. All right, so let me just share my screen so that we have that presentation up. All right, so thumbs up if you can see a big smoothie bowl. Thumbs up. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, so quick disclaimer here, because we are talking about healthy body weights and weight loss, if you do have kids that are in the room, this is really adult content. When we work with children and nutrition, the messaging is very much about, is really not about losing weight. So if you have children in the room, just put in your head thing just to make sure that they are not overhearing people's food fears and body weight fears. All right, so nutrition for a healthy weight. Now, whether your goals are just to maintain a healthy body weight or to and starting with this, so some of us are at home a lot lately. So if this is your new office, it comes with its own challenges. So many of us working from home or maybe walking in circles in our house throughout the day means that the kitchen cupboard and the fridge are readily available to us. So every craving, every attempt at squashing boredom, our kitchen is there kind of calling our name out. So we need to be mindful of that, and how do we manage our body weight through that? So you've probably heard of the COVID-15, which is the 15 pounds that people are afraid to gain during this self-isolation. We want to make sure that we're squashing that right from the get-go. All right, so everyone's reality right now is very different as well. So some people are training more than they normally would be. So they're actually getting those workouts in, they're putting extra effort, more time in their routine for themselves, for mobility, for their workouts, maybe for their healthy eating. While other people are now all of a sudden working from home, having a hard time, separating home from work, maybe putting in extra hours to make sure everyone's taken care of, and then taking care of kids, trying to make sure that they're entertained as well as educated. So your training may have increased, or it may have taken a temporary hit these days. So what's important to recognize here is be realistic with yourself about where you're at. Has my training increased, and should I be fueling more for that training? Or has my training taken a step back, no matter what my intentions are, and I need to adjust my intake on the flip side and reduce my intake a little bit because I'm not training as much as I normally would be. All right, so a little self-assessment there. Think to yourself what your training's been like, and be really realistic. We know that people tend to overestimate how much they work out. So that's the truth. Make sure that you're doing that little self-check with that. All right, so the topics that I want to talk about today to help you balance all of that out are what a healthy weight loss is, how do you balance your plate, how do you balance your meals to achieve those goals, what a healthy snack looks like, and how do you plan those into your day, as well as mindful eating. So being mindful when we are eating, paying attention to those meals and avoiding distractions actually also helps us to reduce cravings and to be more satisfied with our food. Right? And as I mentioned earlier, Q&A at the end, so we'll have an opportunity to answer your questions and bring them on, send them my way, and we'll try to get through all of them at the end of the session. All right, so starting with weight loss. So we see a lot in the media, in the tabloids about these really quick weight loss fixes. And that should be a red flag for you when you see these like 20 pounds a week or any of that. So what I want to really emphasize is what a healthy weight loss is. So you may have heard this before, and it's not usually what people want to hear, but a healthy weight loss is actually only about ½ pound to 2 pounds per week. Now, that's our body's capacity to burn fat, to lose fat. If we're losing more than that, some of that weight is going to be coming from water weight, and some of that weight is actually going to be coming from our lean muscle mass, which we need to keep our metabolism going and to obviously help us out with our workouts and our day-to-day activities so that we can be strong and healthy and fit. All right, so bringing it back to that 0.5 to 2 pounds per week, that really depends on what your starting point is. So if your starting weight is higher, you may be more towards that 2 pounds per week. If you don't have a lot to lose, you're going to be closer to that 0.5. So if there are any math geeks or math nerds or people that have a calculator handy, I put that into a percentage as well. So 0.7% of your body weight would actually translate to where you stand in that range. So depending on where you are now, kind of gives you an idea. All right, so just a note on that is that when we do lose too quickly, what happens, right? So when we lose weight too fast and we lose some of that muscle mass, we actually slow down or reduce what our metabolic needs are going to be. So it actually means that we have to eat less as well to maintain that lower body weight. And if we're losing too quickly, that's exacerbated. So everyone probably has heard of yo-yo dieting, where you lose a lot of weight really quick and then you fall off track, gain it back plus some, right? And then you're probably feeling pretty bad about that. You try to lose weight again, do something extreme, lose a lot of weight, gain it back, and then some. So we find people in this cycle of going on and off of really strict regimens that don't serve them in the long run. So when we're talking about a healthy weight loss, we're also talking about making choices and making those changes in your routine that can become your lifestyle, something that you can maintain long-term and that you're happy with. Because if we restrict for too long, we just come off. We're stubborn like that as humans, and we just want to be happy. So find something that you're happy with and that you can maintain long-term. All right, so that brings me to a little point, just a short point on energy availability. So if you are in that group that is training more, you're bored, you got lots of time, and you're getting a lot more training in than your usual, this is really something that you do need to think about, and it's energy availability. So what that is the amount of energy that you are taking in minus the energy that you are going to burn during exercise. So what that means is that whatever is left in the tank is what you're going to use for your hormone production, your cognition, so your mental acuity, your immune function. There's a lot of talk right now about immune systems and making sure that we maintain a robust system with everything going on. So when you restrict too much, you're negatively impacting all of those processes. So there's not enough left in the tank for that hormone production, for that cognition, for that immune system support. Right? So this is not the time for crash dieting. This is not the time for all the different fads that are going out there, because we know that overly restricting our energy actually will negatively impact our immune system. So what do? We aim for that 0.5 to 2 pounds per week, so that losing is that fat loss, and we're not getting too extreme where it's affecting the rest of the systems in our body. What to recognize is that there is no one way to lose weight. Still there? I'm getting a note that my internet is not stable. We're good? Okay, so there's no one way to lose weight, which means that for different people, there are strategies, different motivators, different things that work for different people. What is important and what is the same for everyone is that it does come down to energy in versus energy out. So if I am taking in less energy than I'm burning, I am going to have weight loss, right? The second part that does work for everyone is that what you can maintain long-term is going to benefit you. So it comes down to energy in versus energy out. The way that you do that, as long as you're getting the right nutrients, might be different for one person to the next, but then you have to choose something that's going to work for you long-term. And motivation is a piece of that. So we talk a lot in the military about finding your why. Why are you here? What motivates you? What makes you want to go to that next level? And it's the same thing when it comes to weight loss, because you're going to put in a lot of work. You're going to put in, as you're going to choose the fruit and vegetables instead of the chips sometimes, and you're going to have to put your running shoes on and get outside and go for that walk or that jog or that run. So if you can tap into that motivator, whatever that is for you, it's going to make each step of the way a little bit easier, right? And remember, what you can do long term is going to be something that those small goals that you care about, that you're motivated to maintain. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty, I guess, the nutrition stuff. And the first piece of the nutrition side that I want to get into is how to balance your plate. So you may have seen the new Canada Food Guide. It came out last year. The Canada Food Guide really pushes a balanced plate. So here we have half of our plate being vegetables and fruit, a quarter of your plate being a lean protein, and a quarter being whole grains. So we'll dig into that a little bit more, but as you're looking at this plate, I want you to think about what we're achieving here. So the half plate that's vegetables and fruit, those are actually going to be the lowest calorie foods that are going to be on your plate, and vegetables especially. So if you can fill more of your plate with vegetables, the total calories of the plate in front of you is going to be lower. So that means even when you're making a spaghetti sauce, the more veggies that you can toss in there, so more of the volume of your spaghetti sauce that is vegetables, it means that the caloric value of that spaghetti sauce is going to be lower per serving. Right, so we can aim for this. Now, if you're someone that you don't eat half a plate of vegetables right now, this is something to aim towards. But as I said, those small goals and small changes that are sustainable for you, that's what you want to aim for. So let's say that your plate is just right now this tiny little sliver of vegetables. You're just going to grow that a little bit and then grow it to a quarter of your plate and then keep going until it's half of your plate. Right? So you want to make sure that you're making those changes that you can actually keep up. Now, oftentimes we get questions about, can I choose frozen or can I choose canned vegetables? Absolutely. So that when they freeze your veggies or your fruit, they flash freeze them right away, right after taking it off the plant, and it really does lock that nutrition in. If you're using canned, make sure that you rinse them to get some of that sodium off. Right, so that's the vegetable and fruit side of things. We also have our quarter of our plate that is whole grains, and our quarter of our plate that are protein that we're going to get into a little bit more as well. Right, so mix it up. You want to have variety. The more variety that you have in your diet, the more of the different nutrients you're going to get from all of those foods, and you're not going to get as bored. You're going to keep yourself interested in the foods that you're having. So it's okay to have kind of that plate ratio that you always aim for, but put different veggies on there, put different grains, different meats, so that you don't get bored and you can stick to it long term. When we're talking vegetables and fruit, different colors have different nutrients. So the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that you'll find in vegetables and fruit, and the phytochemicals, so those like cancer-fighting agents and inflammation-fighting agents that are in plants, they all have different purposes and different ways that they work in the different colors of vegetables and fruit. So you want to get that variety in, very important. All right, next up is HIIT. Depending on your life stage, so whether you're growing or pregnant or elderly or training a lot, your protein targets are going to be a little bit different. So from someone who is an adult, not growing anymore and sedentary, that would be someone that's on the lower end of our target range, 0.8 grams for every kg of body weight. And for someone who is training hard, wants to maintain that muscle mass, especially if they're losing weight, they're going to be at the right side of that because we want to make sure that they're maintaining that muscle during their weight loss journey. Every 3 to 5 hours, you're looking to kind of get that little protein snack or meal in. So you want to kind of space it out throughout the day rather than having it all at once. And as Canadians, we're really good at that. We're really good at eating very low protein throughout the day and having a massive steak or a couple of burgers or something like that at at supper time. So what we want to do is try to space that protein out throughout the day. Now, we're looking for lean protein sources. So plant proteins like beans and lentils and tofus, really great ways to get that protein in with very little fat. Choosing chicken breast without the skin on it, choosing the leaner cuts of beef or the leaner ground meats are going to be ways that you can get those protein in without as much of the fat. And the reason I say that is not that fat is bad, we need it in our diets, but the fattier cuts are also higher in calories. So if your goal is to manage your body weight or lose weight, lean proteins are the way to go. Now, something else that you want to know about protein is that it keeps you feeling fuller longer. So it actually slows down how quickly things leave your guts, which means that you're going to feel satisfied, more satiated between meals and have less hunger pangs in between, feel more satisfied. Now, when we're looking at those numbers, if you're thinking to yourself, like, am I getting enough protein? I don't know what these numbers mean. That's okay. When we're looking at that plate that we talked about and a quarter of your plate being a protein source, between that and the small amounts of protein that you're going to get in your vegetable, fruits, and grains, you're going to get probably about 30 or more grams of protein per meal, and that's absolutely adequate. Okay, most Canadians actually get more protein than they need. So we are generally lacking in vegetables and fruit, not proteins. All right, like I said, for the math geeks out there, the numbers are there for you to play around on your calculator afterwards. All right, next tip is choosing quality carbohydrates. So by quality carbohydrates, I'm talking about foods that are minimally processed and have a lot of the nutrients still locked into them. So when you choose whole grains, you're getting lots of fiber, vitamins, and minerals in those grains. So rather than choosing a white bread, you would choose a whole grain bread, or even a whole wheat bread would be better. Nuts and seeds, legumes, so including more beans and lentils and chickpeas in your diet, those are going to be ways to get those quality fruits and vegetables as well are sources of carbohydrate that have lots of fiber. And when you're shopping, if you're not going for those kind of like whole foods that you're going to prepare yourself, you can also look at labels. So when you're choosing a bread or a granola bar or a cereal, choose the carbohydrates that have high fiber. So when we were talking about protein, I mentioned how protein helps you feel fuller longer. Fiber does the same thing. So the more fiber that's in your meal, the more full you're going to feel, and the longer that meal is going to last for you before you're reaching for something else. Fiber has a lot of other great benefits, like keeping you regular, maintaining the healthy microbes that are living in your gut, and it actually also helps with your blood cholesterol. So it helps to decrease the bad cholesterol in your blood. Right, so lots of benefits. Now, if you're ramping up your fiber big time, so you're gonna run to the store, wait in line 6 feet away from other people and buy the bran flakes, make sure that as you're increasing those carbohydrates, the beans, the bran flakes, the vegetables, you're also watching that you're getting your hydration in. Okay, so fiber, the way that it actually helps with your gut motility is it will reabsorb some water into your intestines to get everything flowing nicely. Now, if there's no water available for it to reabsorb, you're going to have opposite outcome. So some blockages or some slowing down of that movement. All right, so we've got our protein targets that we want to hit. We've got quality carbs that we want to make sure we're including. And half of our plate is going to be multiple colors of vegetables and fruits. The next thing I want to talk about is including those healthy fats. So fats are the third thing that are going to slow down how fast things leave your gut and how full that you're going to feel. So when we're talking about fats, there are different types. You've probably heard of trans fats lately in the news. So trans fats are being cut out of our industrialized foods. So we're not going to see them as much, and you'll see lots of products that say trans fat free, so that's great. We also have saturated fats and unsaturated fats. The ones that our Canadian population are lacking are unsaturated fats. These fats actually help us to improve our blood cholesterol and also reduce inflammation. Okay, so bonus. Where do we get that? Plant oils, nuts, seeds, fish, avocado. Okay, these are going to be some great sources. You can also get them from like chia seeds and hemp hearts. There are some products like yogurt and eggs that are fortified with omega-3s. So there's another unsaturated fat that you want to fit in. And some people might choose to supplement with an omega-3 supplement as well. So including fats in your diet, and I know that for years, fats were kind of like the bad guys and you wanted to limit them, but including them in your diet will help you to feel fuller longer. But they're also important in the production of our hormones and our messengers that are in our body as well. And they help you to absorb some of the vitamins that you can only absorb with fat, right? So you do need to be careful about adding too much of those healthy fats because they are high in calories. So you just want to have, you still want to have salad dressing on your salad, but you don't want to put too much. You want to include avocados, but you don't need to eat a whole avocado every day. About a quarter of an avocado would be adequate to get those health benefits from it. All right, and the last tip for balancing those meals is to make water your drink of choice. So we need to think about hydration day in and day out. And when you're out of your normal routine, sometimes our hydration routine also suffers. So you want to get those liquids in throughout the day. But what you want to be careful of is taking in too many calories. So if you are drinking your coffee with cream and sugar, or you're getting your fluid intake from juice or maybe beer even, as you're sitting at home all day, every day, and the sun's coming out, you need to be mindful of how many calories that you're consuming throughout that. So we want to make water our drink of choice, especially if weight maintenance or weight loss are one of your goals. All right, so here's your recap. We've got our plate. Half the plate is vegetables and fruit, so we're aiming for lots of different colors, which makes your plate more interesting. It doesn't mean you need every color on your plate every meal, but make sure that you're at least every day getting a dark green and a bright orange, and try to fit in other colors as well. So maybe in the morning with your oatmeal, you're gonna have some blueberries, so you'll get that blue color. You may have a salad with some dark greens at lunch with maybe some brightly colored peppers or something like that. And then at supper, you've got squash and onions and mushrooms on the barbecue. Okay, so lots of ways that you can get all those different colors on your plate. A quarter of your plate is whole grains. So you can get that from whole wheat or whole grain pasta, whole grain bread, quinoa, bulgur. You can get barley, whole rice. Any of those can be your whole grain options. And then we have our quarter of the plate that's going to be lean protein or more. So you can actually increase that little part of protein to a little bit more of your plate. So we're not talking half of your plate here, just a small increase in that protein if you are training a lot as well as trying to lose weight, so that you have that protein to rebuild and maintain your muscle mass during your weight loss journey. All right, so that's on meals. I want to talk about snacks now. So snacks can help you stay energized and manage your cravings throughout the day. But oftentimes when we think of snacks, we are reaching for the wrong foods. So when we are looking at our snacks, what we want to do is try to think about protein and fiber every time that we have these snacks. So whether that's your morning snack, your afternoon snack, or in the evening, you can eat in the evening. Often people are nervous to do that, but the problem with evening snacking isn't the time so much as the choices that we make and what we're doing while we're eating them. So I know that a bag of chips disappears pretty quickly when you're focused on the TV show in front of you, but you can definitely choose a healthier snack and focus on it, which we'll talk about a little bit more later with mindful eating. All right, so we want to think fiber and protein. So what are sources of fiber? We talked about vegetables, talked about fruits, beans, so hummus or something like that would be a fiber option. When we're talking about protein for snacks, eggs, yogurt, a glass of milk, a can of tuna can be a snack as well if you like fish. So you want your snacks to be a combination of both that fiber and that protein. One of my favorites, broccoli and hummus, probably my go-to favorite snack. I see Jess dropping her head there. Apple with peanut butter is another option that you could go for. Nuts and fruit, so a trail mix can be an option as well. You just want to make sure that you're maintaining a small portion of that because the calories can add up pretty quickly. So there's some snack ideas to help keep you on track there. Now, a tip that I think is really important, especially right now where our kitchen is so close by, is that we want to make an effort to have convenient, healthy foods on hand. So you want to make the healthy choice, the easy choice. For my fridge, this is not a picture of my fridge, it's a Google image. I wish my fridge looked that nice. But one thing that I try to do is make sure that when I get home from the grocery store, I'll actually pre-chop some vegetables or fruit to make sure that those are just as easy as grabbing something that's less healthy. Sometimes if you kind of want a snack and you don't really want to go through the trouble of pulling out a cutting board, washing something, chopping it, if that work is already done, you're far more likely to reach for that rather than cookies or cereal or chips or something like that. All right, so do the prep work, have those healthy snacks available. On the same note is that when you make those choices, when you're buying those groceries, if you're filling your house with the high calorie, kind of sweet or salty treats that you like to have, that's what you're going to reach for once it's in your house. So I did hear a quote once that said, whatever it is that you bring into your house for food, either you or someone you love is going to eat it. And that's even more true now because there's only you and those that you love dearly that are stuck in your house with you. So make sure that the foods that you bring in are things that are going to contribute to good health for everyone that's there. Now, that's not to say that the treats are not welcome. They definitely have their place. So I definitely believe in that 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time I'm eating this healthy stuff, and that 20% is when you have kind of that flexibility, because food is a lot more than just fuel. Okay. All right. So as I was thinking about snacks, I also kind of was thinking about what is it that brings me to the kitchen? So lately, I've been making a lot of trips to my kitchen. I don't know if other people are doing the same thing. So I just want to move. I just want to get out of my little home office. So I walk out to the kitchen. And the three main reasons that we go to the kitchen are either you're physically hungry, so you need fuel, your body needs fuel. Maybe it's your mouth that's hungry. Maybe something you know tastes really good is somewhere in your kitchen. Right? So that's just mouth hunger. It doesn't mean that you necessarily need those calories, but your mouth wants it. And then the third one is psychological hunger. So am I actually not hungry at all, but I'm bored or stressed, or this is just kind of my routine. I look in the fridge at 3 o'clock. Is that just kind of that psychological reason that you're eating? So one tip that I have for you is Halt. So essentially, you're going to stop and ask yourself, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Okay, have you ever eaten because you were grumpy, lonely, tired? And I added more, so bored, stressed, need to move. Those are all reasons sometimes that we find ourselves actually eating. So check in with yourself. Am I actually hungry, or am I any one of those other things? One thing that can help you is just have a glass of water. Maybe give yourself 2 minutes to sit with that glass of water and decide if you're going to eat. Then maybe you can last 5 minutes or 10 minutes before you make that decision. I put a picture of carrots here because whenever I really want a snack, I don't really love carrots. So I ask myself, like, would I eat carrots right now? And if the answer is no, then I just like wait longer and walk away. That's a little hot tip. Would I eat carrots right now? All right, so that brings us to the last piece of this, which is to get into that mindset of mindful eating. So I mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but mindful eating is really important in getting ourselves to really enjoy and appreciate and feel satisfied with the food that we do eat. And you may be someone that rushes through meals or eats in front of the TV or while they're reading or while they're checking work emails. What you want to do is, if you can, just stop. Okay, it's only going to take you a few minutes to eat. Stop and focus on your food. So pay attention to the flavors, the textures, the colors that are in the food. Slow down, chew it, pay attention to chewing it, and really experience that food that you're eating. So what that's going to do, one, is going to help you slow down so that you start to feel full before you're actually done just putting that whole plate of food down the hatch. But secondly, what it'll do is it'll help you to just focus on that experience and feel more satisfied. So you'll have time, one, to find out when you're actually full or satisfied, but also get that full satisfaction from your food. And what research actually shows us is that when people eat more mindfully, they have less cravings and they eat less just out of habit throughout the day. Right, so you'll probably eat less at that meal as well as less throughout the day. So try to eat without distractions. If your routine is to have those snacks with the TV on or eat while you're distracted at your meals, try to reduce that and you will hopefully see the benefits from it. All right, so quick recap. We talked about what a healthy weight loss is. So that 1/2 pound to 2 pounds a week. You want to slow down that weight loss so that what you're losing is in fact fat and you're maintaining your lean body mass. You want to balance your plate. So you've seen the picture. You can actually go to Google Canada Food Guide and get a lot more information on that. So feel free to check that out. There are recipes on there as well as an explanation of each part of the plate and ways, tips, and tricks to achieve that. Unlockfood.ca is another site from Dietitians of Canada that will give you lots of cool recipes and ways to, creative ways to include those vegetables and fruit and fill half of your plate. We talked about healthy snacks, so making sure that you're including protein and fiber in those snacks so that they give you more satiety, keep you feeling fuller longer, and they'll end up being those lower calorie foods. And then mindful eating as well. All right, so you've listened to me talk for long enough now. I just want to open up to some Q&A, so you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if you like, or you can just type them right into the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see that chat, but I'm happy to answer your questions. All right, we have a lot of hellos.
I'm not sure we have any questions yet from everyone else, but I'll get you started.
Sure, let's hear it. Thanks.
You talked a lot about calories throughout the whole presentation. Can you talk a bit about what is a good guideline to aim for in terms of calories and kind of times of days we should be getting those calories in?
Thanks, good question. So the average Canadian needs about 2,000 calories a day. So if you train more or you have a larger stature, you may need more than those 2,000 calories, but for an adult, it's a good kind of starting point. Now, we actually don't recommend that people just count their calories all day, because you might just end up eating like 4 donuts in the morning and then you're done, right, for the day. But what I want people to think about in terms of calories is thinking about how your body weight is now. So if you are gaining weight, you're probably eating more calories than you need. So whatever your normal is, you want to scale it back a little bit. And ways to do that could be eating a little bit less or switching those high calorie foods for lower calorie foods so that you still get that same volume, but your total calories will be a little bit lower. Now, if your body weight is going down, then you're probably not eating enough. So you want to slow down that weight loss to 1/2 pound to 2 pounds per week. So you may need to eat a little bit more to slow down that weight loss. Now, where things get a little tricky is when you are not your weight is not changing. So if your weight is not changing and your energy levels are high, you're probably bang on. This is probably exactly what you want in terms of giving your body the energy that it needs. And if your goal is weight loss, you can scale back a little bit, maybe 500 calories a day. So again, either a little bit less food or switching out some of your foods for lower calorie options. Now, if your weight is not changing, but you have low energy levels, you might actually be in a low energy availability state, like I talked about earlier. So you don't want to reduce your calories more. You may need to eat a little bit more and choose healthy foods to do that, to see your energy come up. And then at that point, then you can make that adjustment, whether you need to scale back or keep going up a little bit. And if that's you, I would recommend just like link up with a dietitian to fine tune and figure that out. And I know right now everyone's kind of in that self-isolations, but there are a lot of dietitians throughout the country that are working really hard to catch up with their clients and even take new clients virtually so that you can still get that service. Does that answer your question, Jess?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We have a couple questions that have come in on the chat as well. The first one are, what are alternatives to drinking water with similar benefits?
Great. So you want to get your fluids in. So it's important to get your fluids in however you can. And oftentimes we hear, or I hear, of people that just don't like the taste of water. So how do we do that? Now, fluids can come from lots of different sources. It can be your coffee and your tea, but you want to limit that to 2 or 3 a day. So you don't want to get all of your fluids in from coffee because your caffeine will be through the roof. You can get your fluids from milk, from fruit juices, and dilute those if you can. Soups, vegetables and fruit that are watery, like cucumbers or watermelon or something like that. But you do want to be mindful of where your calories are coming from. So you need to kind of like pay attention to those calories when you're looking at your total of your day. Some other low calorie options, if you can just like cut up some lemon or lime or other fruit that you like and put that in your water, it'll give it a little bit of flavor without adding a lot of sugar or a lot of calories to what it is that you're drinking. And some people will use the Neo drops or tabs to get a little bit of flavor in their water as well, which is also an option. Right, so plain water would be my first choice, but you have all of those other options as well because hydration is so important.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. Is there anything you can do if you are on a medication that has a weight gain side effect?
Yeah, so that is a tricky one. So medications can mess around with your weight for sure in multiple ways. So one way is that it could actually make you gain more or have your appetite a little higher. And other medications can actually reduce your appetite, so you're struggling to get enough food in. So if you're on a medication that makes you hungry, a lot of medications kind of do that, really aiming to get those high volume, low calorie foods like vegetables in your diet so that you feel more satisfied. And then moving more is the other thing that we're not touching on too much today because this is focused on nutrition, but getting moving, drinking a lot of water so that you make sure that your hydration is up and that you're not mistaking that thirst actually for hunger. So there are a lot of medications out there that make people kind of feel a lot more thirsty or dry mouth, and people will reach for food instead of fluids in those instances as well. Now, some of the medications, they do kind of just mess with your hormones a little bit more than just your hunger. So again, I would say like link up with a dietitian and work with them so that you can really fine tune your nutrition. But a really good starting point is looking at those high volume foods that are low in calories, like your beans and lentils, your whole grains, your vegetables are going to be ways that you can start.
All right, next question. With food intolerances, I find I reach for more protein, fruits, and veggies. I have limited grain options. How can I balance it out where I have more fruit and veggies over grains?
Okay, so you can definitely, so you want to make sure that you're going to meet, sorry, I'm thinking about which grains you can choose. So let's start with that. So if you're looking for options for grains, you can definitely reach for oats. If you're if you have celiac disease, you have to be really careful about which oats that you do choose. So they can be contaminated. But if it's a simple intolerance, most people can actually, sorry, I say the word simple, but it's actually really hard to live with sometimes. But you can usually tolerate oats as well. There's rice, quinoa, those are options that you can get in that are grain options that shouldn't affect for the intolerance. What we're looking at is to make sure that you're getting the fiber in that you need, as well as the micronutrients that you otherwise would get from grains. So vegetables and fruits are ways to do that. If you're not getting enough carbohydrates, focusing more on the fruit, like if you're someone that trains a lot that needs those carbohydrates, you will need that as well. And another way that you can look for those carbohydrates, those healthy carbs, is beans. So a lot of beans and lentils are ways that you can get those healthy carbs, that fiber, the folic acid that you'd otherwise be getting without triggering that gluten intolerance. Does that help?
Awesome. Okay, a couple more, and the last two questions that came in are fairly similar, but people are looking for some more resources. So do you have any go-to websites that kind of follow the same guidelines you talked about in terms of snacks, meals, blogs, podcasts, any of those types of things?
So I did mention the unlockfood.ca. They've got tons of really good recipes, as well as information that you can kind of like educate yourself more. So that would be one. Another one that I use is Cookspiration, and it's actually, you can download it on your phone as an app, and depending on the time of day, you have options like, here's a lunch idea, a snack idea, something summery, something hot, and you can just kind of like click that and get some ideas. And they're really kid friendly as well. So if you have kids at home, those are some of the apps that you can use to kind of get some new fresh ideas to do that. So those would be kind of my go-tos at this time. And then I've got kind of some favorite cookbooks that I like to refer to. So Oh She Glows is probably my number one. She's got an app as well for $3 or something like that. Yeah, there are a lot of great options out there, but the ones from Dietitians of Canada, so unlockfood.ca and Cookspiration, are some really great options.
Awesome, thank you. You're doing very well at answering the questions. Thanks for that. We're putting you on the spot really quick, but we really appreciate it.
Great.
Come in. So my doctor recommended to cut out sugar. What are acceptable things to eat if I crave sugar besides fruits?
Great, thanks. So it's important maybe to talk briefly about added sugars versus naturally occurring sugars that are in our food. So oftentimes when people are talking about cutting sugars out, we're not talking about cutting all sugars out of your diet, because sugar is a carbohydrate, and we know that carbohydrate is what we use for our brain, for our red blood cells, for our physical activity, to fuel ourselves. Now, there are a lot of foods that have sugars that have a lot of nutrition. So of course, yeah, the fruit would be kind of my go-to if you're trying to reduce your added sugars. You'll get that really sweet fix, I guess, with the lesser of the added sugars. Other things that I would say is, if you do want that sugar once in a while, just make whatever you're having at home. So people are stuck at home anyway these days, and I've been through the grocery store, the flour is pretty much off the shelves, so hopefully people are baking and making stuff at home. But when you make those sweeter treats at home, you can half the sugar in a recipe very easily to reduce that. You can also use dried dates or mashed up bananas in a lot of recipes to try to give it kind of that sweetness. It's coming from fruit, but you'll kind of check off maybe that craving for a baked good instead of fruit, and the sweet flavor is still ultimately coming from a real food. But yeah, what we want to reduce is the sugar, the brown sugar, the maple syrup, the honey. Those are all the added sugars that we see added. And we see them not just in those forms, but in processed foods, in cereals, granola bars, a lot of foods that we're almost kind of trained to trust as healthy options have a lot of added sugars as well. Sauces too. So if you're making stir fries and some salad dressings even have quite a bit of sugar that's added in that you want to be mindful of. So,
and thanks.
above and beyond on that question, but hopefully.
Another one for you. We work with a lot of people, I know I have in the past, that are big advocates for doing everything right except for one day, and they have that cheat day where they eat everything that they love. Can you talk a little bit about pros and cons to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll remember from the slides that I mentioned that like everyone is a little bit different in terms of what works for them. So a cheat day or a cheat meal can work for someone. But what happens is that they're restricting so much throughout the week that you end up often just kind of like going overboard. There's also the drawback to like your relationship with food. So we want people to have a healthy relationship with food and recognize that life happens. So if your birthday doesn't end up on cheat day, but you want to have cake, what are you going to do, right? So managing that relationship with food for me and what a lot of dietitians these days are talking about as we discuss with each other is that if we can fit those small treats in more regularly, that's actually a better way for one, people to stay on track because you get that little bit every day or every other day, but also to keep that healthy relationship because it can slide into disordered eating and all the way to eating disorders very easily if you really are strict with yourself that way. Now, another con that I can highlight is that cheat meal often turns into cheat day and cheat weekend. And cheat week, because it was a long weekend and it counted Mondays, so now that's cheat week and I'll start after Easter or whatever it is. So it often can kind of like flow off. And what you've done is you've worked so hard all those other days and you've undone your work on that cheat day or cheat weekend or cheat whatever amount of time it ends up being. So recommendations are for a general public, and you know yourself, is to just fit those small treats in regularly so that you're not over restricting, you have that healthy relationship with food, and you don't end up in that trap of cheat whatever comes with it, right? But that said, for some people, that rigidity works for them, and they can be really rigid about maintaining that treat and then getting back on track. So I don't want to completely dismiss it, but for most of us, there's a better way.
Awesome. Okay, one more question. I'm the one asking you all these questions.
Okay, great.
You talked a little bit earlier about alcohol and how those can be unnecessary calories into our diet. Can you talk a little bit about what else alcohol can do in terms of affecting weight loss besides just the calories?
Yeah, so the calories obviously is usually the biggest one that we think about, and they add up very quickly. I do want to highlight that one beer alone could be 140 calories. A mixed drink with all the sugar added to that like sweetened beverage would be providing you even more calories than that. And then you may have more than one. So the calories is definitely a big one. Sleep also alcohol also disrupts the quality of our sleep. So sometimes people think that if they have a little nightcap, they fall asleep a little bit quicker. But the quality of our sleep is affected. And we know that when people are sleep deprived, they hold on to more of that weight around their abdominal area. And that's related to cortisol. And a high amount of alcohol also will bring up your stress hormones as well. So if you're regularly consuming alcohol, that's another factor that you'd want to be considering. So yeah, good point, Jess. It's not just about the calories. There's a lot of other effects that are happening in your body, and your hormones do change up based on that. And then just realizing too that binge drinking, so drinking all at once, if we think about what else comes with that, so whether that's like the pizza joint, whether that's the potential hangover and then greasy food the next day, cheat meal turning into cheat weekend, as we already alluded to, those can all be factors as well. And that's without getting into all of the other health consequences, of course, of alcohol. For anyone that has diabetes or issues with their blood sugars as well, alcohol really does kind of play around with those blood sugars and insulin. And we know that they have a role in holding body weight as well. So we're not as good at regulating it with alcohol in the system.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Renee while we have her here? In the chat box or shout it out? No?
I have one.
Awesome.
I couldn't understand. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. This has been so excellent. You've given me hope because I'm on a medication that causes weight gain, and I'm on it for another 2.5 years. So I'm really frustrated because I'm the heaviest I've ever been. But you've given me some good tips that I can implement. But when you said the two websites or apps, the computer cut out. So I got the second one, but I didn't get the first one. So can you just repeat that, please?
Yeah. So the first one is unlockfood.ca, and I just typed it into the chat as well so that you have that. Oh, I'll send it to everyone. There we go. And Cookspiration is the second. And that, again, is a website or an app for you to look at. And like I said about the medications, link up with a dietitian. You should be able to get a referral from your doctor. Most systems, most healthcare or health providers will cover that with their insurance. And for military, as long as you have a referral from an MO, you can get up to 5 free sessions with a dietitian as well, or 5 covered sessions with a dietitian as well. Great. So I see another question in the chat. So the question is, what would you tell someone who is going to do keto? Because everyone they know has done it and has lost weight. So when we're looking at any of these very restrictive diets, there's a few questions that I always want to ask myself. So what nutrients am I missing out on when I'm going to a different diet? So with ketogenic diet specifically, people are very strictly restricting their carbohydrates. And what we know about carbohydrates, that's where you get those fibers that are very important for your gut health, the vitamins, the minerals that are coming in those foods. Every food group, every type of food has a different nutrient profile that's going to come to you. So if you're cutting out a whole section of it, you're missing out on those nutrients. So that would be one thing that I would like to get someone to think about when they're thinking about keto. Now, if you are going to restrict carbohydrates, it's really important to choose those low carbohydrate foods or that have a lot of nutrient density as well. So I would just say, if you are going to go that route, link up with a dietitian to make sure you're making the right choices. I've seen many people on ketogenic diets that are eating a lot of inflammatory fats that are not doing anything good for their blood cholesterols. You want to make sure that you're eating healthy foods when you are trying to achieve those targets. Now, at this time specifically, I would also mention the effect on your immune system when you're going on a rigid diet that is cutting out certain nutrients or a lot of calories. So we know that our immune system needs a lot of different nutrients to stay robust. And at this time right now, where there's a lot of focus on that and keeping ourselves healthy, it's really not the time to try any extreme or crash diets at all. I would recommend against it at this time. So, is that any other questions? I think we have 3 minutes left.
I think there was another one that came in. What are some good sources of fiber to include in our diet?
Great. So fiber, you can choose high fiber cereals like brand cereals or wheat, kind of like Weetabix and that kind of thing in terms of cereals. We can choose our whole grains. So any of the whole grains are going to be high in fibers. Beans, lentils, any of those legumes are very high fiber foods. Nuts, seeds, you can add flax, add chia seeds into your smoothies or oatmeal or on top of your cereal, that kind of thing. And vegetables and fruit are kind of like the go-to high fiber foods as well. So if you're sticking to that plate, and then choosing your snacks that are going to be coming from those high fiber foods and eating lots of vegetables and fruit, you'll meet your recommendations. But I think most Canadians are just not reaching for those things on the daily or regularly.
Awesome, thanks. Another one came in for you. Any nuts better than others for weight loss?
Okay, let's first talk about the amount of nuts that we should be eating. So nuts are really healthy in terms of lots of fiber and lots of healthy fats that are in there. And it's a source of protein as well. So that's great. But because they do have those healthy fats in them, you do want to watch that you're not consuming too much. So if you have a 1/4 cup measure in your kitchen, just measure out a 1/4 cup, and that's what 1 serving of nuts would be. So if you have that and you're still hungry, but you want to have it with a piece of fruit or some veggies or something like that, that would be a better idea than eating a whole bowl of nuts. So even though they have a lot of health benefits and they can help you to feel fuller longer, which is good for weight loss, over consuming is going to just rise your calorie intake. In terms of which ones are better than others, choose a nut that you enjoy. In terms of the fat content or the types of fats that are in them, I guess peanuts have gotten maybe the less good media just because they're higher in the saturated fats. But aside from them, most of them are like pretty close to each other. So just choose one that you enjoy, but that you can limit to that 1/4 cup intake. Another concern that I have with snacking on nuts would be the sodium content. So just watch that they're either unsalted or lightly salted. So if you're looking at the labels and comparing a couple different ones, you'll see that some of them have a lot of salt that's added, and that can affect your blood pressure as well. So a lower sodium option would be good.
Any final questions before we let Renee go? No? Renee, anything to add? Oh no, one more came in. Another one for you. What are your thoughts on dairy for someone who is asthmatic? Does it create inflammation?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And there has been a lot of discussion about that over the years. So there's always, we've heard concerns about inflammation or mucus building with dairy products. And unless you have an allergy to dairy, that's not the case. So dairy products do provide a lot of healthy nutrients. So you're getting your protein, some hydration, some magnesium, a lot of different nutrients that you're going to get from those products. As long as you don't have an intolerance, it won't actually have that negative effect. There are other milk alternatives though, or dairy alternatives that are available too. So soy milk or soy yogurt, almond milk, every kind of milk is out there now. And they're actually all fortified with vitamin D and vitamin A and calcium, so you would still get those key nutrients that you would get from milk. If you're choosing your dairy products or your dairy alternatives for the protein content, soy is the only one right now that has the same protein content as like a cow's milk. So the others are pretty low in protein, but you can get your protein elsewhere if that's the one that you prefer. Great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Renee. We definitely hit our time and gone over a little bit. So I appreciate you taking the time to and give the presentation. I think it was fairly well received based on the comments. And yeah, hopefully we can tee up on the project again soon.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for all your attention.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. See you later.
Thanks, Renee. Bye.